Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have Miss Brenda Pope joining us today, and her topic will be board diversity, getting it right, implications for your revenues and returns. So, before we start, let me introduce Miss Pope officially. Brenda Pope is a management consultant strategist with almost 40 years working experience. Apologies for that brief interruption. And a demonstrated track record in client transformational and change management assignments around organizational, process, and technology improvements across the Caribbean. A Barbados scholar with a BSc honors in computer science and an MBA with distinction from Henley Management College, she holds the CMC and CISA professional designations. Her experience spans a wide range of private and public sector clients in banking, general insurance, commerce, hospitality, finance, manufacturing, transport, and social security. A recognized expert in ICT, information security, and information risk management. She also specializes in IT strategy, governance, requirement analysis, software selection, implementation, and deployment. She also provides strategic planning, change management, and institutional strengthening, as well as project management services. Brenda is currently Managing Director of Consult BP, an independent consulting company specializing in technology-enabled transformation. She is also a Director and Chief Project Officer at the FinTech Payment dedicated to creating a simple and secure payments infrastructure in emerging economies. She recently retired as advisory partner at KPMG Barbados, where for the last 8 years, she held overall responsibility for KPMG's management consulting services across the Caribbean. Passionate about the need for excellence and quality in the consulting profession, she is a past president and current vice president of the Caribbean Institute of Certified Management Consultants, and in 2018 was the first Caribbean consultant to be designated a CMC Global Accredited ISO 20700 trainer, the global ISO standard for management consultancy services. Wow. A past chair of the EduTech 2000 Advisory Committee on Computer Technology in Education, she was also a member of the TVET Subcommittee on ICT and the Advisory Committee on E-commerce legislation for Barbados. She strives to be a role model for women and girls wishing to work in the technology arena, and in 2012 was honored by the Information Society of Barbados for her contributions to the growth and development of ICT in Barbados over 30 years. Brenda is the founding president of the Barbados chapter of IWF. She has been chairperson of Sport for Life in Barbados since inception, is a trustee of Sport Legacy Foundation UK, as well as a past member of the editorial board of Business Barbados, and is second vice chair of the Royal Commonwealth Society in Barbados. A committed Rotarian, she was the 50th and the first female president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. Brenda serves on the board of Lumen Consulting, formerly UE Consulting, as a number of international business companies. She is a regular contributor to local and regional business publications and has made numerous ICT and business performance presentations throughout the Caribbean and Latin America. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming Ms. Brenda Pope to the podium. Take it away, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Tahara, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be a presenter here at the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions virtual convention under the theme, Building Resilience Through Self-Reliance. And from my perspective, a theme that is particularly apt in light of our last year of COVID challenges. Over the past 3 days, we have certainly been treated to an extensive buffet and almost an overload of new knowledge, thought-provoking perspectives, and valuable takeaways. I must tell you that I feel a little apprehensive about coming into back so late at the end of the day, when after so many innings, when so many persons have hit it out of the ground and made centuries. Anyway, be that as it may, I hope my contribution around this critical area of board governance and composition will provide each of you with a few valuable nuggets to take away. So now I'm going to share my screen, my window again. And I'm hoping that everybody is seeing that.
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you. So, today, after setting the initial context, I will look at several global diversity perspectives and research findings and the benefits of diversity on boards. Then I will briefly examine how our Caribbean financial institutions perform versus our global counterparts. I will present a mixtocracy model for your consideration and specific strategies you can take at your organizations to enhance diversity at the top. So first of all, let's start by agreeing on what diversity is and setting a little context for my presentation. There are many definitions, but I personally like the one espoused by Business Dictionary because it explicitly cites several attributes, including age, background, ethnicity, physical attributes, political and religious beliefs, sex, etc. And all of these go to make up the many components of diversity, some more important than others, depending on the size, the nature of your business, and your workforce. And sometimes, as we all know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, especially when it is describing the status quo. And, you know, looking at this, funny, but there are undertones of reality in that. Before I move on to the actual meat of today, I'd just like to reinforce and revisit what the role of the Board of Directors is. The Board of Directors, union or otherwise, is one of the most influential decision-making bodies, and the responsibilities span the corporate strategy, performance metrics, risk management, executives and their compensation packages, approving major asset purchases, looking at the integrity of audited and published financial statements, and representing the interests of shareholders and members. And that is why it is so critical to get this board compensation right. So first of all, from a global perspective, let's start with gender. Global gender diversity varies widely depending on the part of the world where the company is headquartered or sits, as it is often quite dependent on the cultural norms of the wider society. The Nordic countries have traditionally been at the head of the pack, with Asia and South America at the other end of the spectrum, and the EU, US, and Canada somewhere in between. So that, as you can see here, we have and basically this was a case in 2016. What was interesting is that Deloitte in the same year found there was a startling gender disconnect in the way that the board gender gap is explained. From one side, quote, female candidates, end quote. From the other side, Gender diversity is not a priority, probably being a combination of the two, depending on specific circumstances. First, Diversity and Inclusion Index, DNI. This uses a scoring algorithm based on a broad and a rich palette of measures, 24 in total actually, to capture a variety of facets of diversity. These span the gamut from diversity and inclusion measures like board gender diversity and women executive employees to attributes around HR, such as employee satisfaction or career development processes, and then even to things like wages or working condition controversies. So when we look at this index, what was found is that DNI index companies perform significantly better and have better ROI, return on equities, stronger operating profit margins, and better dividend yields than their benchmarks. Also, they perform significantly better than other normal trading indices like the FTSE 100 and MSCI. So you can see the little diagram, the Thomson Reuters index is the one at the top of the graph. And this performance is on many fronts as well, not only including the profit margins, net and operating, and the return on equity. So that's the DNI index. Now, if we turn and speak a little bit about the Gender Diversity Index, this is a specific annual data compiled from the 2010 Fortune 1000 list, and it's measured and its progress compared for the same group of companies from one year to the next categories, which is where they have more than 20% or more women on boards. Very close, 11 to 19. T token, one woman only, and 0, none. And trends for the GDI have been positive globally in each of the years from when the index was first started in 2011, when less than 30% of companies had 20% of female board members. And there were many organizations, 33% actually in 2011, with just 1 token women. So that's the Gender Diversity Index. But gender is not the only issue that can be considered or should be considered in diversity. Age diversity is a forgotten factor. According to a PwC board composition survey, when asked what it takes to achieve diversity of thought, which is really important on our board, 90% of the directors say that diversity of age is the most important, beating out gender, race, and other forms of diversity. And there's some interesting facts around younger directors, and by younger, they define them as aged 50 or under. Companies with younger CEOs are more likely to have independent younger directors on the board, 60% with CEOs under 50 versus 42% with CEOs over 50. 1/3 of younger directors are women. They are more likely to be found in consumer product companies. 96% have active jobs or positions, and in addition to their board service. They serve on fewer boards, which means that they can devote more time to your board. And for 62% of them, companies actually increase the board size to include them versus cutting a more experienced director. Ethnic diversity is also sometimes a challenge as well, depending on the country. And though there's less empirical research, not unexpectedly, this appears to be more of an issue depending on, no pun intended, the complexion of the country. Although most studies found a positive relation between ethnic minority board representation and key financial indicators, in the US, only 14% of seats on Fortune 500 companies were held by minorities versus 15% on the Fortune 100. And in the United Kingdom, 8.1% of ethnic minorities held seats on FTSE 100 companies What is interesting in the UK is that they had mandated that they have until 2020, later this year, of the FTSE 100 to make sure that at least one ethnic board director, and the FTSE for the FTSE 250 and 24. So they're mandating it in the companies that trade on their stock exchange. Some other characteristics are relevant to varying degrees in different parts of the world, depending on the nature, location, and type of business of the entity. So you might ask, why does all this matter? So before I explain, let's do a quick poll. So if we could have the first poll, please.
It should be already in the polls. Just click on the polls and do your vote.
So if everybody could click on the polls in your and do your vote, please. Above what percentage of female board composition is there a positive impact on firm performance? I'm not seeing any results though.
I'm saying we have 22.2%, oh, 7.7%, 10, 23.1%, 6 votes, saying 20%, 19.2% says 30%, 25%, 40%, and 21.9% says 50%. Are you seeing the results, Ms. Pope?
So can you, because I won't be able to see it. Oh,
no, you can either click on the polls or so I can just.
Which one did you say was had the most?
It was 30%.
Okay, fine. All right, thank you. And I think everybody's completed, so I can go back to my screen again. Well, as you can see from some of the survey report extracts, 30% is the magic number indeed. So we were correct as a group where board gender diversity is concerned. At this 30% GDI level or above, we find higher return on assets, better net margins, better return on equity, and they actually in the corporate board diversity survey, there was actually a 10% increase in female members on the board. It increases created a 0.5 percentage point increase in ROA. So it's not just for feel good's sake. It actually is statistically significant when you get to the point of 30% of your board being female. A Deloitte survey also found that 90% of respondents believe that greater board diversity will enable the organization to improve its ability to innovate, its ability to manage disruption, and its ability to improve the overall business performance. And those are very important capabilities that over the last 3 days or so, we've been having many presenters talk about innovation, disruption, and how we as entities and credit unions can improve our overall business performance. So that this is very important, an important benefit. The same survey highlighted some of the challenges previously mentioned. One of the things is that there was a perception by 94% of the respondents that if there was no executive experience, that person would be seen as unqualified to be on a board. Also, a problem area was that there was a tendency to select persons from other boards in the same industry even, something called the homogeneous effect. And then another thing was that boards tended to rely heavily on resumes in recruitment selection rather than other methodologies that I will talk about in a few minutes. They also found that organizations fail to be proactive in specifically having a process for seeking out candidates with diverse skills, or bringing those with disruptive perspectives to their industry onto the board. You need to bring people who have different perspectives so that you can not end up with groupthink. And then also, there was a reluctance, and maybe this is changing, to impose term limits and retirement ages, because this, and without this, this limits the opportunities for fresh blood and fresh perspectives that age or varied work experiences and work experience backgrounds can bring to the table. Moving back to the age dynamic, today's environment is constantly evolving, and younger directors are often particularly well positioned to add value to address the new challenges that change brings. The digital revolutions of Industry 4.0 and 5.0 with technology like robotics and artificial intelligence are reshaping corporate opportunities and their workforce. Last 3 days, millennials are now the most powerful consumer group, 66% actually, and with spending habits and priorities quite different to all of the previous generations. And a corporate scandal can erupt over social media in hours, whether real. So boards can benefit from younger directors who have actively addressed these types of change in the business environment. You need a millennial on your board to understand millennial spending habits. If your board does not have a post-baby boom director, it may be time to give age a second thought with your next crop of directors. And research by the Kellogg School of Management found that a more diverse group will come to a better decision than a more experienced or even more better educated but more homogeneous group. Bringing a single diverse perspective into an otherwise homogeneous group can shift how decisions are made, avoiding, as I said earlier, groupthink. A dynamic introduces risks whereby decisions end up being stale and negatively affecting performance. Sometimes the presence of a newcomer with a new perspective allows the existing group to voice opinions they might otherwise hold back on. And if a boardroom looks and thinks like its market, it can think maybe more intuitively and creatively, innovate faster, enhance its brand value by mitigating potential reputational risks. I previously indicated that diversity of thought is also critical. And as we have already heard many times over the past few days, traditional industries are being disrupted by agile, innovative startups faster than ever before. So new, diverse ways of thinking are required for larger and more established organizations to respond to evolving customer needs, increasing complex technologies that we've heard of so much about. Targeted diversity, and by that I mean gender, ethnicity, age, or experience in the boardroom, can quickly help to augment all the existing talent with the and the ultimate goal of a diverse assembly or board is to achieve cognitive diversity. In other words, thinking, diversity of thought, because that brings different points of hopefully more creative and effective decision making. So now let's get you all involved again with our second poll. And this was asking, how do you believe Caribbean financial institutions rate against Fortune 1000 companies on the Gender Diversity Index? Outperform, perform similarly, or underperform?
I'll give a few minutes, but right now we have 55.6% saying underperform.
I'm not hearing you.
Hi, Brenda.
You're breaking up.
Okay, we are seeing 56.5% says underperform.
And how much is perform similarly?
perform similarly 18.5%, and outperform 22.2%.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So let me go back to my screen. Well, so now let's see how some of our companies stack up. A year or so ago, in preparation for delivering a similar presentation, I compiled information from the annual reports and websites across 41 regional banks of the Caribbean Association of Banks to examine board gender diversity. There were 41 banks that I was able to get information for. And I found that on average, women represented 30% of the board composition. So actually, we were actually outperforming, but we'll come some more to that. However, that ranged from a high in Dominica, British Virgin Islands, and Belize of 43% down to a low of 13% in Guyana and Bahamas. However, what was very encouraging to me at the time when I did this back in 2018, 2019, was that the over seven, I think it was 2, 4, 6, 7, yes, 7, 8 companies, nearly half the countries exceeded the D&I benchmark of 30% or equal or exceeded it. And also 14 countries exceeded the Global Diversity Index benchmark of 20. So our Caribbean financial institutions, and at least in the banking side, they were ahead or equal to the global performance. Well, I must tell you that this year I had planned to do the similar survey exercise for the credit unions. However, unfortunately, the number of credit unions was 297, which was a bit too much for me to be able to get done. So what I did is I looked at the credit unions in Barbados instead. And hearteningly there, women represented 38% or nearly 40% of the 21 credit unions that I was able to get information for. And these 21 credit unions accounted for 95% of the credit union membership across the island. So it's pretty representative. So as you can see, and this next graph shows what I found is that our Caribbean banks and the Barbados credit unions outperformed the Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 on all of the metrics in the GDI index. In the winning, there was 68% in the bank, and 81% of the credit unions in Barbados had more than 20% of women on their boards. Well, that's not surprising because they had 48% that had, women accounted for 38%. They are 5% with the token and very close. And in the case of Barbados, there were 2 out of those that had no women. So that's some interesting statistics. Also, to give you some other more regional flavor, I'm happy to share with you the findings of the recent survey by the Barbados chapter of the International Women's Forum on Gender Diversity in Barbados. This survey was undertaken during my tenure as president last year, and again reinforces that our Caribbean entities are well on our way on the GDI journey. As you can see, our Barbados companies achieved a noteworthy 29% GDI based on the 51 companies involved in the survey, and this compared very well with the top GDI countries of France, Norway, Sweden, UK, and Finland. So that was very good. Also, 49% or nearly half of the survey reached or exceeded the 30% GDI benchmark. So that's very valuable information and showing that we in the Caribbean are moving in the right direction. So now, towards wrapping up, I'd like to spend a few minutes to share what I call what is a mixtocracy model with you, which I think heralds the new way forward. In the old meritocracy model, which is very positive, organizational advancement is based on merit, i.e. talents and accomplishments, which is as it should be. And this helps to combat nepotism and favoritism that often permeates business or used to permeate business in the past. However, unfortunately, it also sometimes results in where all the directors bring similar perspectives and approaches to governance, to risk management, and to other board responsibilities. So what I would like to do is instead to invite you to consider the mixtocracy model, which encourages us to rethink risk. In other words, who is needed to help ensure management is taking the right risks for value creation and not loss prevention, to help to elevate diversity, and in addition to gender, age, and ethnicity, to consider diverse traits like the employment history, their industry experience, their educational and artistic and cultural endeavors, whether they've had international cultural living, whether they've had military or other national service. These are perspectives that are the other diverse perspectives that bring new things to the table. You also need to think about retooling your board composition that consider not only the individual profiles of the existing members, but to assess the board as one holistic body greater than the sum of its parts. And we also need to revitalize succession planning. When filling an open position, use a mixtocracy model, combining individual differences in a deliberate manner. So not just male or female, young or old, but also all of the types of attributes that I alluded to earlier, so that we can provide more effective counterbalance to the management group. So where do you go from here, or where do we go from here? Some strategies that you can utilize to enhance your board diversity include, and especially when there's new vacancies, engage in more vigorous efforts to achieve this diversity, including more robust processes for sourcing and evaluating diverse candidates. Adopt broader definitions of diversity while continuing to focus on the role and ethnicity play in shaping perspectives and experiences. Include diverse directors with valuable skill sets. IT is really useful right now. Cybersecurity is useful right now to allow you to have an opportunity to grow the overall business rather than a merely check the box exercise. And as I said earlier, abandon simplistic board composition tools in favor of more sophisticated tools and programs that link the board composition to your strategic needs and desires. Move beyond exclusionary search criteria, such as always insisting that the person must have board or CEO experience, and include more holistic and flexible ways of identifying and selecting candidates, as I alluded to earlier. Examine whether the previously appointed and the existing directors all have the experience and skill sets that are still relevant today. Over the last 3 days, we've heard of some of the challenges, what that COVID has introduced, the disruptors, Industry 4.0 and 5.0, what's happening on many levels across the globe in our region and in our entities. And we need to make sure that we have persons at the top of our credit unions who have relevant skill sets that can help to address these challenges. And whatever gaps you identify, try to address them as you bring on new members or seek to fill any vacant gaps on your board. And finally, as was said when on one of my slides speaking to age, consider actually expanding the board size to add the diverse perspective and cognitive variety that's needed. If you only have 5 spaces instead of trying to fight and you want to have the financial and the legal and some of the more traditional ones, maybe you could add one more person so you can get into the technology or the cyber or the age. You can add one more perspectively as well. So that will allow you to look at these are strategies to enhance the diversity of your board. And my final closing thought is just to remind you again of what was found, that a more diverse group will come to a better decision than a more experienced or better educated but more homogeneous one. Given the critical role of your board, I posit that it is vital to get it right and to make it more diverse. Thank you very much. And now I will stop my sharing and we'll move to the Q&A segment.
Thank you so much, Brenda. We want to thank you for your informative presentation. And I'm sure lots of persons have lots of questions about the board and the diversity of the board. Come on, people, put some questions in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask a question. Josephine Dublin says, thought-provoking, thanks. So what I'm going to ask, Carrion says, excellent presentation, very informative. So Brenda, you spoke about the board and the board being diverse, but what would you say to those boards who think of the board as an old gentleman's club? So they're a bit skeptical about including more female on the board. How would you advise those boards or those companies?
Well, I would refer them to all of the statistics that show that when you get to 30% female, it has positive financial results. So you get better net operating margins, you get better net margins, you get better return on equity, you get better financial performance of the organization, mainly because you get a different perspectives and some of the decisions are taken using different thought processes. So this is not a matter of feeling nice or say, oh, let's bring somebody in just to, to be good or to do something to help somebody out. This is good business sense. Surely you would like to leverage what the statistics show is that having, and certainly in the gender one, once you get to 30%, you start to get that benefit. There are also, as you saw in one or two of the other slides, where, but you asked about gender, so I'll leave it at that. So just tell them that it's a business decision. If they had an opportunity to increase their ROI at the bottom by 5 or 6 percentage points, wouldn't you want to do what it takes? And all you need to do is to, over time, increase the number of women on your boards. That seems like a no-brainer to me, but and that's why I'm saying, depending on the size of the credit union, obviously, I'm not suggesting that if you currently have 6 board members that you increase your board to 10. I'm not suggesting that. But I am saying that if you have currently 5 members, maybe you could consider increasing it to 6, because you might only have 1 woman now, and maybe you can add a second woman, maybe somebody who's younger as well. So you get the age, the age diversity, the age experience, etc. as well. Maybe you can move and have somebody with a risk management background if you didn't have one before. Maybe you can have somebody with a cyber technology background if you didn't specifically have it before. If you increase by 1 person your board numbers, it gives you a chance to increase diversity in selected ways while still maintaining the traditional types of skill sets that people are looking for, some legal background, some financial background, some experience in the credit union industry, possibly, etc., maybe, etc.
Thanks so much, Brenda. Karen says, thank you. However, board selection comes from members, and some boards have a closed bond that will definitely affect diversity. What do you think about that, Brenda?
Well, I'm looking at the question. Board selection comes from members, and some boards have a closed bond. Yes, that is one of my early slides. Spoke to the perspectives of the men that feel that there's a lack of qualified females sometimes. There's definitely research that also shows that people bring on others that they're comfortable with. And if there've never been any women there before, it's like when Rotary brought women in, some people left. And now, but women have now made significant contributions and are leading many, many aspects. And Rotary, I think, has been revitalized, and the same thing with bringing on the voter actors as well. So I would say that it is a challenge, but that the members who are voting for the board need to consider what this research shows. When you have a more diverse board, you get better decisions, you get better financial returns, you get better return on your investment, on your assets, on your margins, on, you know, all of the. I see here.
Josephine asks, how do societies influence participants at an AGM to consider these aspects when nominations from the floor can quickly erase all the hard work of the nominating committees?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that maybe we need to find a way in your annual report or in some report that goes out to the members to include some of the research around the need for board diversity. So you're not trying to just say, put up these people because they're my friend, or I want to stay a woman. You're saying that the research has shown across all of the countries, across different sizes of institutions, that a more diverse board, and particularly one, and obviously there's been more research, so I guess that's also why it's showing that when you get to a benchmark of 30% of women, you get overall better performance. Now, having said A, I have to say B. It's not just a woman for a woman's sake. The person still needs to bring the criteria, the experience, etc. So we're not saying being, you know, let me not, somebody that's not been working and has not been contributing and has different perspectives to bring. You don't just put forward 3 persons to fill slots. It's not just seats on the chairs. There have to be people that meet the criteria anyhow. But what I'm saying is that you need to think about it and don't use the excuse that there are no women, because there are plenty women. There are plenty qualified women. You just have to ask. And groups like IWF Barbados, we are an IWF in Trinidad, Bahamas, but wherever they have IWF chapters, part of what we are doing is trying to come up with networks and pools of women who are not just qualified, but who are maybe trained and understand the role of the true responsibility of somebody who's on a board.
Okay,
and
Go ahead.
I see a comment there about remove the rules of the credit union to remove the option of taking nominations from the floor.
Yes.
And then that would solve the question that somebody else had asked. How do you do it? But there's a nominating committee, and then people nominate from the floor, and the old boy network kicks in, and then suddenly you had a slate of candidates that were appropriate and were diverse and would have provided whoever was selected out of that slate of candidates, you would have had a change in the composition, and then suddenly on the floor. I agree with that, Karen. I'm not sure what happens in the rest of our countries.
Brenda, in your experience, what challenges have you had in trying to encourage diversity? Have you had any like setbacks or any pushbacks?
Have I had?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm on a number of boards, so clearly they felt my input was valuable enough to put me there. I'm on UB's council, on a couple of international business companies. I just think that sometimes it's not that there's pushback, it's just laziness. It's easier for people who are sitting around the table, 6 people that know each other, to say, listen, somebody's resigning or retiring or leaving or whatever. Or who do you know? You go run around the table and say, oh, so-and-so is good. He sits on the board with me at this other company, or so-and-so is good. Or he speaks up. Or even if they might say, oh, so-and-so sits on a lot of boards, so he knows what he's talking about. Which is quite the opposite actually sometimes, because when they sit on too many boards, they don't have enough time to really devote to helping to really look at the information that is brought to them. But be that as it may, let's not go there. So that's what happens. It's easy to just ask everybody, give me some names, you know. And it's similarly even within I'm glad to hear about the nominating committee. So hopefully they will make an effort to say, you know, we need to get some women. Who are the women that are working, that if you're looking for something in tech, if you're looking for something in cyber, you're looking for something in risk management, you're looking for something in legal, even in the existing legal, maybe we can get a female lawyer if the person that's your legal person is leaving or is old or is retiring, then maybe you can actively seek to get a female qualified and who's interested to join as well.
I see a question from Samantha Dewberry. What can be done if your board appears to be diverse in terms of age, gender, religion, but you realize from the nomination process or even the floor nomination, there was manipulation? So the person chosen is just a mirror image of what is already there. So no progress, same old, same old.
Yes, that was, if you remember on my slides when I spoke about the need to move from a meritocracy, because that leads to mirrorocracy, and that's exactly what's happening here. That is difficult because, as you say, the point will be made that when we have so many people under 50, we have 28% women, we have different ethnic groups, but just because somebody's young, as you said, or just because somebody's a woman, doesn't mean that if they're coming from a similar background, then they're going to have similar perspectives. I really don't have, I don't have a specific solution. I think you need to try to have ethical people on your nomination committee. So,
yes. So Bronte says nomination committees can be narrowly configured with given more weight to staff management and board of directors, more influence in selection. Therefore, the AGM input can broaden the choice. What do you think about that, Brenda?
Well, that's the opposite of what was just said in Jamaica, where they're removing the nominations from the floor. There's always two sides to every coin, and there's always pros and cons. So having nominations from the floor can help to override narrow nominating committee approaches. But having said that, if you had a good nominating committee approach, as was alluded to earlier, I can't remember because it's gone up in the chat now, then you can have nominations from the floor override what was otherwise a good nomination process. So I think each country, because obviously there are nuances and flavors, we're not all cookie cutter. There are different challenges of gender in some of our countries as opposed to other. If you remember the slide I put up showing that when I'd done it for CAB, for the banks, in was it in Dominica and in let me get back, in Dominica there was like 43%, but yet down in the bottom in Guyana there was only 13% women. So they're different, and I presume that they're probably different ethnic challenges in some of the more racially mixed societies than maybe in some that are more mono. So I guess that is something that you need to think about from your own particular country and deal with your realities in your culture as well. Because I think I alluded to that at the beginning, that some of the things that happen in the Caribbean we have different cultures in Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname than Antigua, Jamaica.
Yes, that's definitely so. And the comment you were speaking about is when Carrion said in Jamaica, the Department of Cooperatives has recommended that the rules of the credit union be amended to remove the option of taking nominations from the floor. Accordingly, the member would either accept or reject the nominations put forward by the nominating committee.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any more questions for Ms. Pope? If there are no more questions, Ms. Pope, do you want to do like a brief wrap up or?
No, I just want to end with that research, that quote that came from the Kellogg survey, and I'll just reiterate it again, that a more diverse group will arrive at a better decision than a more homogeneous one, even if it is better educated, and has, so that it really, that diversity in the long run brings better decisions and decisions that take into account better diversity of thought, and hence to look at maybe things that are under the surface, but because people have other experiences, they see the implications of things happening because of their background, because of their varying backgrounds.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pope. And we'd like to wrap up. Thank everyone for attending, and thank Ms. Pope for her brilliant presentation. We have learned a lot, and we look forward to receiving the slides of the presentations that we can go more in depth with your presentation. So thank you, everyone.